but you're so dumb. You're so dumb. I don't even know how to explain it to you anymore. Unless, this is the other option, unless you also are a transphobe. You know what I'm saying? Unless you also are kind of a misogynist.
So that right there is Francesca Fiorentini being very, 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 very angry at Cenk Uygur for daring to not mention her by name, but mention the absolutely stupid and ridiculous stance that Francesca took on a previous Piers Morgan episode about how the top male athletes who are dominating the males division should be allowed in her perfect world, if they declare themselves to be a woman, to compete on the female teams. This is something that Francesca Fiorentini 100% said, but she's mad at Cenk Uygur for bringing it up in a podcast, because how dare Cenk Uygur ever actually note the ridiculous positions that this woman takes? Now, we're going to talk about this. We are going to break this down. We're going to talk about Francesca's meltdown after Cenk Uygur brought up how absurd this is. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
You know, they're people, right? Like, I guess I just want to, if there are transphobes watching, like, you do know that, like, trans people are people. Like they have feelings, they are bullied, they bleed, they feel bad about themselves, they strive, they train. You know, they're like, I just wanted to make sure we know they're people.
So again, I will emphasize this because a lot of people, including myself, before I was informed of this fact, would be confused, because Francesca Fiorentini, even though she acts like a child, even though she looks like somebody in her late 20s, early 30s, is actually over 40 years old. So all of this acting from her is just a show of her complete and utter lack of maturity. Now, of course, she starts off by talking about how the transes actually are people and the transes have feelings, which again, nobody is disputing at all whatsoever. When we're talking about the conversation of sports, we understand that men are more athletic on average, and when you get to the professional level, those gaps widen than women. Therefore, it is completely unfair to have them compete against women. The entire point of male sports, also known as sports, is to maximize competition. If any woman is able to compete on the men's team, I say you allow her to compete on the men's team. However, that does not appear to be the case, and by contrast, for female sports, for them to exist, they have to exclude males from those sports. These are basic premises, basic ideas. Everybody understands this, but Francesca Fiorentini, of course, stupidly, like the idiot that she is, decided to say that the top male athletes should be allowed to come in and dominate female sports. And then she got mad that Cenk referenced this as a stupid argument, because how dare you mention things that she actually said. But what I find even funnier than this is that she is upset that she was even asked this hypothetical, because how dare you try to put her beliefs to the test as she doubles down on her stupid beliefs.
Now, Piers Morgan has come equipped with a list of athletes, famous male athletes, that he wants to ask me, the resident lib, whether or not, if they transitioned, which was very important to say, that I would allow them to play in whatever sport. And he thinks he's got a gotcha. Now, here's the problem. This is a bullshit premise. This is a bad faith premise. When he's coming with his list of who I would or wouldn't, what am I supposed to do as someone who thinks that, sure, if Messi tomorrow put on a skirt and said, I'm a woman, simply as, like, let's say he did it as an anti-trans gag, right? Or not, or maybe whatever. Would I be like, nah, I don't know about that. You know, have you done hormones? Have you been on hormones for like 3 to 6 months? What are the regulations of U.S. women's soccer? You know, is there any kind of bar or testing, whatever it is, right? That's not the answer you should give. You shouldn't give an answer like, well, I mean, if Messi, who I guess does kind of have some feminine characteristics, were to, you know, do an estrogen regimen for, you know, 6 to 12 months, then I would definitely be okay with them, you know, with her, I guess at this point, playing for U.S. women's soccer. Like, that would be okay with me. That's not the answer. But if Usain Bolt were to do it, I mean, I probably wouldn't allow him to do it. Or like Michael Phelps shouldn't be allowed to swim in women's swimming because his ankles go back in the opposite direction. So I guess I would say, like, yes to Messi, no to Usain Bolt, and probably also no, like, That's not the answer you should give.
Again, I will emphasize, even though Francesca looks like she's in her late 20s and maybe early 30s absolute maximum, that she is somebody who is over the age of 40. She is supposed to be a mature adult, but the fact of the matter is, she is expressing her total lack of connection to reality, her total lack of maturity right here in this very moment. She is very, very upset that Piers Morgan asked her these questions with ridiculous premises. However, she's the one who doubled down on those ridiculous premises, which was the whole point of him asking her to see if she would bite the bullet, and then she did, and now she's upset that she did that. But of course, she blames everyone and anyone but herself, because Francesca Fiorentini is an absolute child. She's an absolute baby. She's an absolute brat who can't take any accountability for her own actions or the things that she said.
I'm a big Messi fan, so but let me just explain this
answer
to you.
my question. Would you allow him, if he said I'm a woman, to play in the American women's
You're
national
using the
team?
wrong pronoun
Yes, right now. Hell yeah. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Messi on the U.S. women's national team? Hell yeah.
Would you
because
allow
that would
Usain
mean-
Bolt to do that and be in the sprinting
Yes,
team?
because that would mean they're a trans woman. They identify as women.
I get
You would have
it.
to
So just to be clear,
transition.
you would let Lionel Messi play in the...
Okay, then the other guy agrees with me. And so I was like, yes, if he transitioned and she is she, that's fine. Undergoing hormone therapy passes the bar. Whatever, again, whatever the guidelines are for that sport, I'm okay with that, because I don't believe trans people should be barred from playing in any sport or being in any walk of life the way a cis person is.
All you had to do, Francesca, is say that Floyd Mayweather would not be able to declare himself a woman and beat the crap out of females in boxing. That's all you had to do.
Hang on.
To get a ticket, which would suck.
I want to do a little checklist here. You'd let Usain Bolt compete as a sprinter in the American women's Olympic team?
Yes.
Okay. You would
Yes.
let Floyd Mayweather compete as a boxer in the women's American boxing
Yeah.
team?
Yeah,
you
of
are
course
a
you have to be
complete
like the
and utter
heavyweight.
lunatic.
I completely agree
Lunacy.
I agree with Francesca, and I go
They
further.
would
Actually,
have
Piers,
to
you always
transition.
All you had to do was say that Lionel Messi should not be able to compete on the soccer team. Maybe if you were an actual comedian, which you pretend to be, you would point out that he wouldn't play for the U.S. soccer team. He would actually play for the Argentinian soccer team, but I guess that was too far beyond your ability to think. You couldn't even joke your way out of it, but instead, you doubled down on the stupidest premise, and what happens as a result of that? You are the poster child for idiots who are buying into this 80-20 issue that is going against you, and we're all laughing about it. And Cenk ends up citing this as an example, who, by the way, you've been attacking repeatedly, despite the fact that he put you on TYT, ended up helping you out throughout the course of your career, but now that it's convenient for you to backstab him, you've decided to do so, and now you're very, very upset that on an issue that you're an absolute doofus on, he's pointing it out.
So he comes in armed with that. And it's like, oh, now we got you and we're going to use it in the cold open. You look so stupid. You look so dumb. You giving me hypotheticals and me changing my position based on your dumbass hypotheticals is a bad look. It's a bad look politically. It's a bad look morally. And it's a bad look argumentatively. But on all those things, like, I don't change my stances when something happens, when some fucking hypothetical happens. It's not going to make me change my stances, or just some story. Like, one time I heard an undocumented person killed this woman, therefore every undocumented person should be killed. That's not how I roll. That's not how most progressives should roll. But of course, I made a mistake, according to Mr. Cenk Uygur, who was on former host of the Biggest Loser, Jillian Michaels' new show, where she offers lots of sound advice on how to be a perfect... I don't know what she talks about. I really don't care.
So right here in the setup for Cenk's clip, where Cenk is making perfect sense, she ends up talking in a little beba voice because, of course, she has to infantilize herself as much as possible in order to be rescued by other people who have IQs that are in at least the 3 digits, unlike Francesca Fiorentini herself. And this is how she operates on her stupid podcast on her own when she doesn't have the backing and the production value of TYT. She talks in a little nasally voice because she's like, oh, Cenk Uygur made fun of my a position that is completely indefensible because I'm an idiot, because my name's Francesca Fiorentini, and I can't take it, so I'm gonna say, oh no, people are literally dying because nobody agrees with me that Floyd Mayweather should be able to beat up the ladies.
Talked about me. He talked about me. He invoked my name. One of our hosts. First of all, I've never been a full-time host. So once again, one of our mercenaries. But let me just caveat this by saying, don't ever speak for me. Don't ever use me. We are not the same. We've proven this many times over. We are not the same. We don't come from the same cloth. And so I would like you to don't claim you sort of like, well, one of our hosts. There's no our. There's no our. This is not a weird you speaking for Anna. You guys are the same person, Tweedledee, Tweedledum type situation, okay? I am a me. You can call me by my name. My name is Francesca.
So you can tell that Francesca is completely lost in the wilderness right here, and she doesn't know how to react to Cenk Uygur bringing up her actual stated position because it's so ridiculous on the Jillian Michaels podcast, because Francesca is getting very, very angry at the fact that Cenk said one of our hosts, which by the way is just accurate. She was a host at TYT, still is a host, I think, on the Damage Report, which is under the umbrella of TYT, and there's nothing objectionable about this, but she's like, yo, you're not like me, there's no we, you can't say our. I'm very offended by that, despite the fact that Cenk is drawing a distinction between him and one of the hosts at his network, Francesca Fiorentini, who's very upset all of a sudden that she didn't get a full-time position at the network, which, by the way, why would you ever hire this person even part-time, even as a contractor at the network? She calls herself a mercenary, and she's very upset about that, but I'm sorry, Francesca, when you provide no value, when you provide negative value to the network, there's no reason for you to be hired on board. You could have decided to leave at any time. In fact, now all of a sudden you're drawing the distinction between you and Cenk and Anna, going out of your way to insult them, that you've teamed up with Mehdi Hassan on their new network. So yeah, Francesca, calm it down, relax. He just said our host because that's understandable, and you're like, oh, he called me out by name, so I'm upset. And then later on in this part of the video, you mentioned that he didn't mention your name, and that's also why you're upset. That's also why you're angry. But again, the real reason you're angry is because you took a stupid ass position on the Piers Morgan show. You walked right into the trap. Everybody's making fun of you, and it's completely and utterly indefensible.
So some on the left, I mean, one of our hosts, Piers Morgan, asks her, so are you okay with Leo Messi playing in women's sports? And by the way, he said in the most extreme way, if he declared himself a woman tomorrow, even without hormone therapy or anything.
Doesn't work. First of all, that's not what happened. You guys just saw what happened, right? He said, if Lionel Messi tomorrow, he didn't say without hormone therapy. I said, if he transitioned, caveat, if he transitioned, yes.
I'm telling you, I could give you 19 different studies that show it's not effective.
So first of all, my opinion is, are you nuts? Like if you put Messi in, he'd score 20 goals a game. If you put LeBron in the WNBA, with or without hormones, he'd score 200 points a night.
So one of the things that I will point out is the question was from Piers Morgan if he transitioned tomorrow, and Francesca makes the idea, oh, well, if he actually did transition, then she would be okay with it, as if that changes anything of the sort. But I also want to point out that Jillian Michaels is not listening to Cenk at all whatsoever, because Cenk gives the setup for the premise, and then Jillian Michaels is like, oh, I have 19 different studies that show that that doesn't work, when again, Cenk is talking about somebody not even taking any kind of hormone suppressors or anything of the sort, just going from the male side to the female side. So if you weren't a humorless wretch, if you were actually a comedian instead of an alleged comedian like Francesca Fiorentini is, you would point out that Jillian Michaels is not even listening to Cenk. She's actively just waiting to talk, and that's like a funny component of this that is just not included in anybody's commentary. But I just want you guys to go to this original clip and point out that Jillian is not paying attention really to a word that Cenk is saying. She essentially got triggered by Lionel Messi women's team, and all of a sudden she's like, I got all the studies and all the data that shows that that's wrong, even though we all understand that men better athletes than women.
So first of all, my opinion is, are you nuts? Like if you put Messi in, he'd score 20 goals a game. If you put LeBron in the WNBA, with or without hormones, he'd score 200 points a night.
Okay. I'm sorry. This is full disclosure here. I like men's soccer. Okay. I watch men's soccer. and I don't support women's soccer as much as I should. I just want to be honest with that, okay? I just gonna be completely 100%. Like, I've seen, like, I haven't seen a Galaxy game, but I'm not a big sports person, number one, but I love soccer. I love Argentine soccer, especially. I like the World Cup, all that.
So first of all, Cenk is 100% right on this. If you put one of the best, if not the best soccer player, or one of the best, if not the best athlete in whatever sport on a women's team or playing against a women's team, he would absolutely dominate in ways that are cartoonish. And one of the things that I find hilarious is that Francesca Fiorentini is going to admit that she doesn't watch women's soccer. She doesn't watch these women's sports. She's not into it herself, which is one of the disingenuous ways that they try to attack people who are concerned about this, as if the issue is the viewing pleasure of the audience rather than the fairness, rather than the scholarships, rather than their injury risks that are all made worse by the fact that you have biological men competing against women. In addition to that, again, I will emphasize, the whole entire premise of men's sports is maximum competition. Anybody's allowed in there. The whole premise of female sports is limited competition. Specifically, men are not allowed in there because without that limit, you would not have female sports. Do we all understand how these two different leagues are not parallels? They're not equivalents on each side. They are alternate goals that are being met, one by including everyone, the other by excluding men specifically.
I have watched U.S. women's champions. What are we, 4, 5-time champions? Nobody fucking cares. Every time the U.S. women's soccer team wins yet another World Cup, we don't talk about it. We don't herald it. We judge them because they, did something against Trump or they knelt for the national anthem. That's the only time we talk about women's sports, or because we want to make Caitlin Clark some sort of, white damsel in distress against a bunch of black, WNBA players. That's the only time we talk about women's sports.
So again, Francesca goes on to this whole rant about how people don't care about the Women's World Cup. Well, sad day. That's just the reality. And then she talks about the only reason people care about the WNBA with Caitlin Clark is because they could be racist to black women. And again, it is the black female WNBA players, the non-straight black female WNBA players, that are going after Caitlin Clark and saying that her fan base is in fact racist, when in reality, she is one of the first NBA players, or WNBA players, excuse me, major difference right there, that is able to carry a fan base from college into the WNBA. It should be good for all of the WNBA, but these petulant children that are in that particular league can't stand the fact that somebody with her level of talent and skill has brought fans into the league, so they decide to complain about evil white racism. And guess what? Francesca Fiorentini right here playing into that narrative. There is no bad argument, there is no bad position that this woman would not take, and it's absolutely embarrassing to see her do this time and time again. But let us get to her overall point.
But the idea that Lionel Messi would score 20 points, 20 goals if he played in the U.S. women's team, like what, like a friendly, is bullshit. I'm sorry. Like, do you know how many points are scored in soccer generally? Do you understand how they work? I'm not saying you wouldn't do well. I could see him getting like 6 off 20. What do you like? This is like so stupid. Like, who do you think the women's team are? Do you think like female athletes just aren't good athletes? Because I'm starting to feel like you think female athletes aren't good athletes.
So one of the great things about people like Francesca Fiorentini, who don't know anything about sports, who are absolute idiots from top to bottom, is that you can ask every single question that they put forward right back to them, and they would be baffled by the actual answer. Right there, she said, Cenk, who do you think the Women's World Cup final team actually is? And the question should be asked right back to Francesca, because the answer to it, who they actually are, is quite telling. Because guess what? FC Dallas ran a boys under 15 team against the World Cup winning champions. They beat them 5-2. Under 15-year-olds, boys, beat the Women's World Cup Championship team that represents the whole country, the best and brightest, the most talented of all the women, 5-2. The game wasn't even close. Now, 15-year-olds just from one city in the United States of America, Dallas, Texas, can smoke, can humiliate, can utterly destroy a World Cup winning female team. What do you think an actual top-tier professional soccer player who's the best at his craft would do if he was put on one of the teams? He'd absolutely obliterate them.
Who do you think the women's team are? Do you think, like, female athletes just aren't good athletes?
20 goals is not outside what you would expect from this kind of player being added into the league. Francesca Fiorentini just has no understanding at all whatsoever of the great differences between biological males and females. And again, soccer is a perfect example of this. The way that the women's national World Cup winning team has performed against boys 14 and under is a great example of this, but she doesn't know any of that. So instead, she gets very, very offended on behalf of the fact that Cenk Uygur touched on a reality.
Okay, and I've read the studies. They always say, "Oh, there's studies," and they never read them. Then they got to the absurdity of Floyd Mayweather going into women's boxing if he declares himself a woman. Do not say yes to that. Do not say yes to that, because they're going to hurt someone. And when they do,
Right.
you're going to lose the country even more.
100%.
Then you're not protecting trans rights. You're walking them backwards.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So imagine, guys, imagine if I had said, yes, I think Messi should transition. And I think that, Usain Bolt could transition and play in women's sprinting. But I don't think Floyd Mayweather. And I was honest about that. I've said before that I should have said the joke, Floyd Mayweather shouldn't transition because he's hit enough women in his life. And that was a total missed opportunity. But if I was like, yeah, no, you're right. No, you're right. Yeah, not Floyd Mayweather. I mean, okay, but just not in boxing. Like every other sport, but like not boxing. Because like women are like fragile and stuff, and like they can't do that.
So right here we have Francesca Fiorentini talking about how she is an alleged comedian and she should have made a joke at a moment in time months ago on Piers Morgan, which just goes to show you the level and caliber that she's operating at. And I don't want to ding all female comedians for this because again, Francesca's comedian status is in fact alleged at this moment in time, but 2 months later for a comeback, not a very good representation of your comedic chops. Maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't allow men comedians to transition to females because they would absolutely obliterate people like Francesca Fiorentini. But also, I just want to point out, she is missing the entire point. Cenk is saying, don't sign up for Lionel Messi, don't sign up for Usain Bolt, which again is another one that's ridiculous. Usain Bolt is so much faster than men at sprinting that he was quite literally looking at the camera and smiling for the photo as he crossed the finish line because he was so ahead of the men. The idea that he wouldn't absolutely obliterate the women is absurd in every possible way. But Francesca's brain is so damaged by left-wing ideology, she actually thinks Cenk is saying you should sign up for Lionel Messi, you should sign up for Usain Bolt, but then jump off the ship when Floyd Mayweather or a boxer comes up, when in reality he's saying you should be logical about all of this.
What would it look like as someone who believes women are absolutely capable of boxing? What would it look like as someone who absolutely believes trans people should play in sports? What would it look like argumentatively to say 3 out of the 4 examples you are bad faith lobbing at me, I think could play as a trans woman, but this 4th one shouldn't? Cenk thinks I should have not said that? Like, that's so fucking dumb. On every level, that's dumb.
Yeah, Francesca, you're the one who's being dumb. You weren't supposed to bite the bullet on any of those extreme examples. The fact that you did shows that you are an extremist, that you're an absolute loonbag in every possible way.
And we're talking about a hypothetical. And this is the problem, is like, there are people, and I think like John Idarola, our good buddy, is one of them, who we argue this. And I don't take this tack. We argue this tack on, hey, you're using a hypothetical for a population that is about, 0.3% trans athletes, right? We're talking about less than a percentage point. Why are you distracting us with these issues? Why are you throwing up these hypotheticals? This is all meant as a massive distraction and as a way to dehumanize, a population. Like that's a fine way to take it. But where I take it is, nah, man, I stand with trans people being able to play in sports. I see that you're doing a bad faith hypothetical, but I also stand with them. Even if you weren't doing a bad faith hypothetical, I would still stand with them.
Now, Francesca also gets angry that people throw out hypotheticals in order to assess people's positions, and I would just point out that a lot of left-wingers are very against the idea of hypotheticals, stretching a concept to its logical extreme in order to get somebody's position, because those are logical exercises and they don't deal in logic. Now, of course, because I'm the most generous man on the internet.com, and yes, I just bumped my microphone microphone right there, I will give Francesca Fiorentini one bit of credit for calling out one of Cenk's positions that I find to be patently absurd and ridiculous.
But Cenk thinks that no, we gotta give them a win because then they're gonna stop coming. If I say that trans women shouldn't participate in collegiate or higher level of sport, they're gonna stop there. They didn't. They just didn't. Trump's executive order applies to all people. When we're talking children included, we're talking about high schools, we're talking about elementary schools. This is all people. These are the athletic bans that are coming down in red states across this country. They are for all. Specifically, they're focused on children. So Cenk's line up until this point has been, no, it's at the collegiate level and above. I think once you get to the college level and above, that's when it's bad. So he would be on board with what the NCAA said recently. But you're so dumb. You're so dumb. I don't even know how to explain it to you anymore. Unless, this is the other option, unless you also are a trans vote.
Cenk's position on how, at the college and the professional level, we should not allow male to female transes to compete in sports, but at the high school level and beneath, we should, is absurd in every possible way. Now, of course, it's not for the reasons that Francesca lays out. It's for the much more logical reasons of the fact that high school and college sports received some level of public funding. Universities often get money from the federal government. In the high school level, you use those sports in order to compete with, in order to qualify for college sports, so it messes it up if you allow the transes in high school but not in college. But in addition to that, we just showed you how high school level boys that are under the age of 15 can beat professional female athletes and dominate them in a game when they play against them. So yeah, the differences are great in the high school level as well. But more importantly, the professional sports, those are private organizations. If you want to ruin your own professional sports league, even though I disagree with it, you should have the maximum right to do so at that level. Where you shouldn't have the right to do so is in the public schools, funded by our tax dollars, again, increasing injury risk where there is no opportunity for other girls to compete in other leagues. You can have a situation where a professional league allows men to compete in the women's division, but women could choose not to participate in that particular league. So Cenk's position is completely incomprehensible because it doesn't include high school and younger, but Francesca is just calling it out as being wrong for all the wrong reasons because she's not very smart herself. But I did want to make that clear because I do want to give people credit, and of course I want to move on to Francesca calling Cenk the B word because that's how she handles her business.
What has it got you? What did it get you? When you go and fucking share a stage with Dr. fucking Phil, what did it get you? Nothing. You know why? Because you look like a bitch. You know what I'm saying? You look like a bitch. That's what it is. Like, that's just what it comes down to. You don't look like a fighter. You don't look smart. You look like a bitch. That's just the reality. I've tried to tell it to you nicely. I've tried to tell it to you cordially. I've tried to tell it to you on your show, on my show, on every show. And so either you A, are a bitch, or B, you actually agree with the right. And I'm starting to think, in fact, I do think it's the latter.
Yeah, Francesca, I just want you to know, you're a fool in every possible way. Here you have Cenk Uygur telling you how ridiculous you look on this particular issue. The polling ends up coming out, and it finds out that Americans, 80% of them, do not want biological males competing against female sports, and you're on the wrong side of that issue, and your arguments are absolutely terrible for why your position is correct, despite the fact that the American people can see this for themselves. They know it intuitively. They understand the purpose of female sports is to exclude men, and yet you're going against that with these weak-ass arguments, and then you're crying. You're throwing a hissy fit over the fact that not everybody wants to jump on board the sinking ship with you. Well, you shouldn't be surprised about that, and honestly, you shouldn't be mad about it. You should just accept the reality. You want to pretend like you're standing in front of marginalized folks, like you're taking a risk, then you can't be surprised when everybody else doesn't want to jump on board that sinking ship with you. You should just accept the reality that you are in the fringe, you have ridiculous positions, and you're an embarrassment in every possible way. Not cry about Cenk and say, don't say I'm one of your hosts just because I was at your company for years. I was never a full-time employee. When nobody cares, Francesca. Nobody gives a damn. Go team up with Mehdi Hassan. Go back to your Al Jazeera state-sponsored propaganda roots that is meant to sow discord in the United States of America, because we don't want to hear your absolute nonsense. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Francesca Fiorentini, crying about Cenk Uygur. Till next time.